As a congregation, our theme this year is the idea of moving forward. Moving forward is not always easy. There are times when we meet resistance. There are some words in our English language that describe what needs to happen. For instance, we use the word endure. Now, endure is suffering patiently. But please note that endurance can occur without any forward motion. A stone can endure a storm without going anywhere. But then there's perseverance. Perseverance is defined as steadfastness in an activity despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. Perseverance is endurance with forward motion. Perseverance is indeed that moving forward. Now, there are some terms that we will use in our language, some idioms that we have. The idea of keep on keeping on. The Chinese have an ancient saying that rings with wisdom and brilliance. I can't wait for you to hear it. Mo qin chong zane. Isn't that special? The literal meaning, grind rod into needle. The idea of continuing to work on an item or a piece so as to achieve a desired outcome. Are we having trouble up there, Dan? Okay. Hebrews 12, beginning in verse 1. Wherefore, seeing we are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Let us run, that's forward progress. Let us run with patience, the word translated patience, the Greek word hupomane, the idea of endurance. Let us move forward with endurance. Endurance with forward progress, that's perseverance. The Christian life is an endurance race. It demands perseverance. But after the Hebrews writer calls Christians to persevere, he then says, let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Our endurance race, our run of perseverance is to be done looking unto Christ. Now, that brings to mind the question, wait a minute, can we persevere like Jesus? Can we endure the way He did? Well, think about just a few passages of Scripture. One, we have the exhortation to be like Christ. 1 Corinthians 11:1, Paul said, be followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. So Christ is our model. We're to be like Him. Or we think about Philippians 2:5, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. We're to follow the model of Christ. We're to have the mind of Christ. Or we think about Matthew 10:25, wherein Jesus said Himself, it's enough for a disciple to be as his master, for a servant to be as his Lord. We endeavor to be as our master. Thus, we are to be like Christ because we want to follow the model that He sets. We want to follow after the mind that He has shown, and we want to follow after the master that we serve. Yes, indeed, we can be like Christ. Not only do we have the exhortation to be like Christ, we have the expectation to endure. 1 Corinthians 15:58, be ye steadfast and unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. That's endurance. But connect that with Romans 12:10, be faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. Faithful up to and including even if it costs you death. That's continuing to move forward no matter what the cost is. That's perseverance. Which brings us back to Hebrews 12:1. Let us run with patience the race that is set before us. We have the exhortation to be like Christ. We have the expectation to endure, to persevere. Now we put that all together and we have the example of how to persevere like Christ. We look at what James had to say. James 5, beginning in verse 10, he said, take my brethren the prophets who have spoken in the name of the Lord for an example of suffering, affliction, and patience. You want an example of patience, James says? Verse 11, you've heard of the patience of Job. Now there's an example of endurance. Patience. Job. You've heard of the patience of Job and you've seen the end of the Lord. He's our model. You've seen His end, His goal, His outcome. James says that we are to look to Him in order to see what perseverance indeed looks like. So, connect that with 1 Peter 2:21, where Peter says, for even hereunto were ye called, that Christ suffered for us, leaving us an example, that we should follow in His steps. There's that endurance idea again. Following after the example of Christ. So, can we endure? Absolutely. Are we to be like Christ? Indeed. We have the example so that we can endure like Him. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. That's what's really at stake. This perseverance, the idea of the things that we need to endure. We might ask, what's on the line? When we're enduring death and loss of loved ones, we're enduring loss of worldly considerations or physical priorities, when we endure the immorality around us, when a Christian has to endure the ridicule of an ungodly society or the shame that's sent his way perhaps by unbelieving family members, when Christians must endure all that the world hurls in our direction, even the threat of apostasy from those among our number who have opted to walk away. Each of those scenarios is a potential threat to faith. How does faith persevere? The Hebrews writer was actually encouraging that very idea, faith that endures, when he penned the words of Hebrews 12. It went all the way back to the end of the discussion in Hebrews 10, when he made the point in verse 23, let us hold fast the profession of our faith, our hope, without wavering. We can hold fast to our confidence, our trust, our relationship with God. It's faith that is up for grabs. It's faith that is on the line. It is faith that is at stake. How does our faith endure like Christ's? This is the question we hope to answer. Now, looking unto Jesus, perseverance is going to involve perception. Resilience is going to involve recognizing something. When we set our eyes on Christ and we allow our minds to follow the line of thinking that the Hebrews writer presents, the encouragement between the end of Hebrews 10 and halfway through Hebrews 12 is phenomenal. Parents who are trying to encourage their children in challenging activities, take for instance an athletic event, will often use phrases that in our minds they've almost become cliche. Statements like, winners never quit, or practice makes perfect, victory takes sacrifice, you can do it, just do it. When we take a look at what the Hebrews writer has to say, those are the very sentiments that the Christians in his day and the Christians still in our day need to hear if we would indeed persevere. So, if we're going to run this race, if we're going to have that faith that perseveres, let's go all the way back to Hebrews 10 and start moving forward. Hebrews 10, picking up at verse 35, winners never quit. Norman Vincent Peale was known for saying, it's always too early to quit. Winston Churchill, the leader of the British nation and the Prime Minister during World War II, said, I've never failed at anything in my life. I was always given a second chance to make things right. So often it's the case that quitting happens because we feel like we failed, instead of realizing that we've had an opportunity to learn what not to do and can instead move forward and getting things correct. Too often we quit because we chalk a stumble up to failure instead of an opportunity to learn. The Hebrews writer encourages his audience saying, cast not away therefore your confidence, which hath great recompense of reward. Don't throw away your public acclamation of your relationship with God. Do not throw away your confidence, your declaration of your dependence upon God. There's a great recompense of reward there. There's a reward price. For ye have need of patience. Patience, hupomone, endurance, that after you've done the will of God, you may receive the promise. Promise, a prize. Now, yet a little while, and he that shall come will come, verse 37. The just shall live by faith. Verse 38. It's interesting. The Hebrews writer points his audience back to the words of Habakkuk chapter 2, emphasizing that yes, we're awaiting something. The just will live by his faith. But then he makes a contrast at the end of verse 38 when he says, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. That's a quote from Ezekiel. But the point being made is the just will live by his faith, his trust, his relationship with God, whereas those that draw back have no relationship with God and he has no pleasure in them. But then verse 39, you're not of them that draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul. The prize, the reward. The prize, the promise. The prize, the saving of the soul. The prize that is stressed in Hebrews 10, 35 to 39. It's not for quitters. We're not of them that quit. We're not of them that draw back. We're not of them that throw in the towel. We're of them that persevere. We think about a statement known to have been made by Calvin Coolidge. He said, there's nothing in the world that can take the place of persistence. Talent cannot. The world is full of unsuccessful men with talent. Genius cannot. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education cannot. The world is filled with educated derelicts. He then made the point, persistence and dedication are omnipotent. That's where the force of forward motion comes. The determination to keep striving ahead. Now those words came from Calvin Coolidge. Scripture exhorts the same idea so much more simply. Let us run with patience the race that's set before us. We keep moving forward because, well, the prize isn't for quitters. Think about the words of Churchill on another occasion. Edison, rather. Edison said many of life's failures are those who didn't realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Winners never quit. The prize is not for those that decide, I'm not going to go across the finish line. I can remember dealing with some young folks that if they thought they were going to lose a race, they stopped running altogether. Quitter. No, the one that wins is the one that's willing to face failure, willing to cross the finish line 5th, 4th, 3rd, but working his way up to 1st as he continues to learn how to push. The prize is not for quitters. Moreover, the Hall of Fame is not for quitters. At the end of Hebrews 10, the statement is made in verse 39, we're not of them that draw back to perdition, we're of them that believe to the saving of the soul. We are of a special group, he says. Them that believe to the saving of the soul. Who's that? Hebrews 11. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. By it the elders obtained a good report. By faith we know God made the world. By faith Abel, verse 4, offered. By faith Enoch, verse 5, was translated because he walked with God. By faith Noah prepared an ark. By faith Abraham left Ur of the Chaldees. By faith Sarah conceived a child. By faith Abraham was willing to offer that child. By faith Abraham blessed Isaac. By faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. By faith Jacob blessed Joseph and his brethren. By faith Joseph told his family, you carry my bones out of Egypt and into the promised land. By faith, by faith, by faith, by faith. By faith Moses refused the Egyptian culture and chose rather to suffer affliction with the people of God. By faith Israel went through the Red Sea. By faith they conquered Jericho. By faith Jephthah. By faith Barak. By faith Samson. By faith David. Hebrews 11 has been called Faith's Hall of Fame. The roll call of the heroes of faith. Don't forget what's said just before we get to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 10:39, we are not of them that quit. We are not of them that draw back into perdition. We are of them that believe to the saving of the soul. Our peers, our cohorts, our examples, and our company are the names that fill the verses of Hebrews 11, those that endured by faith. Now please understand, they are not in the roll call of the heroes of faith because they were always absolutely, unconditionally perfect. Abraham. Oh, Abraham. He could have been called the father of the fickle. God said, go to Canaan. He stopped at Haran. He could have been called the father of the faithless. God said, stay in Canaan. And he went to Egypt because of a famine. He could have been called the father of the fearful because he put his wife into a harem because he was afraid of the people of Egypt. And then later, the Philistines. He could have been called the father of the forceful because he tried to push God's plan ahead by siring a child with Hagar instead of waiting on God to work things out in His time. Abraham could have been called the father of the fickle, the faithless, the fearful, the forceful, but he's called the father of the faithful. Why? Because over the course of his days, Abraham learned to trust God. And he's just one example out of Hebrews 11. Who lived by faith. You want to talk about the flaws of Moses? The shortcomings of David? They're not in that roll call, Faith's Hall of Fame, because they always did everything perfectly right. They're there because they trusted God. They learned from Him. They changed. They grew. Babe Ruth would make the statement, every strike brings me closer to the next home run. He might be the most recognizable name in baseball's Hall of Fame. In August of 1971, the New York Mets had a 24-year-old pitcher with a strong arm. He could hit 90 miles an hour with every fastball, but he was wild. Manager Gil Hodges told him on one fateful evening, if you don't have a better outing, you are finished in New York. He lasted 4 innings. Miserable night. After the game, he's standing in front of his locker. New York Times reporter Richard Reeves noted that he could not even tie his tie as he stood there alone because his eyes were so welled up with tears. At the end of the season, this pitcher would be traded to the California Angels. He would then pitch for the Houston Astros and then later for the Texas Rangers. By the time this 1971 failure retired in 1993, he held the Major League Baseball record for 5,714 strikeouts and 7 no-hitters pitched. And Nolan Ryan was a first ballot inductee at 98.8% approval into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Not because he was always the best pitcher, but he persevered. Brethren, whether you want to look at the Hall of Fame of sports or you want to step back and look at the Hall of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11, we are of them. Faith perseveres. Faith endures. The resounding cry from Hebrews 11 is, winners never quit. Never give up. Those are the words of Churchill. Never give up. Never, 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 never. And no matter great or small, large or petty, never yield to force, never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. Never give in. That's how Christians live their lives. That's what it means to live by faith. A faith that perseveres and endures. Winners never quit. But now look back at Hebrews 12:1, where the Hebrews writer says, wherefore, seeing we are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. Hebrews 12:1, the word translated witnesses, a form of the Greek word martyros. We get our English word martyr from this. Now, a martyr in our minds is one that dies for a cause. But a person that dies for a cause is one that dies because he is convicted and convinced. The Greek idea of martyros is connected to evidence, testimony, witness. When we see this word utilized in the New Testament, it's usually translated in one of those ways. Record, report, testimony, witness. When he says we're compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, who are those witnesses? Back up to Hebrews chapter 11. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11 is about to supply some evidence. Hebrews 11:2, by faith the elders obtained a good report. Obtained a good report. Hebrews 11:2, that's a form of martyreo. They left witness. They left evidence. They left proof of what faith does. Or look at Hebrews 11:4. The description given of Abel. By faith Abel offered a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained a good report, martyreo, having this testimony, martyros. Twice in Hebrews 11:4, the idea is emphasized concerning evidence. Hebrews 11:5, it said of Enoch that he obtained a good report. Martyreo, he left evidence. He's a witness. We move all the way through Hebrews 11 and we come to verse 38. The point is made, Hebrews 11:38 and 39, these all obtained a good report. They left witness through faith. When we read Hebrews 12:2, we're compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. The image is not you are in the arena and everyone else is watching, eating popcorn, saying, ooh, what's he going to do? No. We are compassed about with a great cloud of witnesses whose lives scream, you can do it. If a man as fickle and fearful and faithless and frail as Abraham could do it, can't you? If a man with as many flaws as David exhibited, with as many shortcomings as Samson, can have his name in faith's hall of fame, if they can do it, can't we? That's the idea of Hebrews 12:1. We're compassed about with a great cloud of witnesses that are saying, we did it. You can too. We held to faith. We held our relationship with God. We held to our trust in who He is and what He has promised. You can do it. Listen to the testimony of the past. Look at all of those examples throughout the Old Testament. But He doesn't stop there. He doesn't stop with the lives of the patriarchs or those under the law of Moses. You can listen to the testimony of the past, the witness, the proof. But you can also look to the triumph of the Son, looking to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, the author, the one who is the first leader, the one who blazed the trail, the author and finisher, perfecter, who completed it, of our faith. Our trust in God, absolutely, but also the standard by which we trust in God. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of everything that defines us, who for the joy that was set before Him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. When we look to Jesus, we see Him doing what He did so that we too can do it. We'll hear parents say, winners never quit. That's the idea the Hebrews writer conveyed in Hebrews 10. We'll hear so often, you can do it, look at so-and-so and look at so-and-so. That's Hebrews 11. You can do it. Winners never quit. You can do it. When the heart is broken because that dear loved one is no longer here. When it seems like the world is darker because society is becoming ever more immoral. When we're wondering, why are so many pews empty? Where are our brethren going? We can do it. We can endure. We can persevere. Winners never quit. You can do it. But then we pick up in Hebrews 12 and we begin moving forward, and there's another idea conveyed. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before Him just sat back on a recliner and waited for it to come His way, right? For the joy that was set before Him endured. There's that word again. Translated the idea of patience in verse 1, endured. The verb form of hupomane. He endured the cross, despising the shame, sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. We think about what victory cost Christ. Victory doesn't come easy. Victory takes sacrifice. Oh, we hear it used in sports. We hear it used to encourage others, but do we really apply it to our walk with God? Victory cost Jesus agony. Think about the state of the body of one that's nailed to a cross. His back is already in tatters and shreds because of that Roman flagellum, that flagrum, that whip from the scourging. His back is a sea of whitecaps in blood. That's the bones coming out of the flesh. And then they place that some 115-pound patibulum across his back, as coarse and rough as a railroad tie and just as heavy. And then he gets to Calvary and they drive the nails. The pain, the agony, it cost him exactly that. Who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. He had his eyes set on something that motivated him to endure that sort of pain. Victory cost Jesus agony. But not just the physical pain. It also cost him shame. Hebrews 12:2, he endured the cross despising the shame. What shame? Oh, there's the scoffing and the ridicule, but we'll get to that in a moment. There's the shame of being on the cross in the first place. Moses would point out to Israel, Deuteronomy 21:23, that accursed is everyone that's hanged on a tree. The one that's hanged on a tree is considered accursed or despised by God. He's viewed as a villain. Paul would refer to this same idea, Galatians 3:13, when he said, cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree. By being hung on a tree, Jesus was viewed as the villain, the bad guy. And all of the shame that comes with that. Was he the bad guy? Absolutely not. But he had to hang there, being perceived as exactly that. He endured being viewed as the enemy so that he could save those who are his friends. He endured being viewed as the villain so that he could provide salvation. Victory cost him agony. It cost him shame. And it cost him opposition. Hebrews 12:3, for consider the contradiction of sinners that he endured is the description. The word translated contradiction of sinners, it's the idea of gainsaying. Consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be weary and faint in your minds. This contradiction of sinners, there's a reference to all the mocking and scorning, all of the, he's Christ, let him bring himself down. He saved others, let him save himself. If you be Christ, save yourself and us. Those were the insults hurled from that other thief on the one side. He endured, yes, the ridicule. Not only being perceived as the villain, but having to endure the insults that came from those for whose souls he was dying in the first place. Victory cost him that. There's a Sicilian proverb, there is no victory without sacrifice. Success will always cost something. Success that comes with no cost is not success at all. That's just a gift. Success always costs something. With Jesus, it costs physical pain. It costs heartbreak. It cost all that opposition and backbiting. And those that were attacking him to tear him apart. By the way, the same happens today. This idea of gainsaying or the contradiction of sinners described in Hebrews 12:3, it's the effort of those who have no faith, and therefore they attack those with faith in order to tear faith apart. It's when our friends in the world who decide they want to follow after man-made doctrine, decide they're going to ridicule those Church of Christers. It's when our family members who decided to walk away from the church think they are so big for their britches that they can try to hurl insults toward the bride for which Christ died. And it breaks our hearts. But if Jesus faced such opposition, should we be shocked when we do? Winners never quit. You can do it. Victory takes sacrifice. Then we move forward. Pick up at Hebrews 12:5. The Hebrews writer says, you've forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither faint when thou art rebuked of him. This is a quote from Proverbs 3. neither faint when thou art rebuked of him. Chastening. The word translated chastening carries the idea not just of punishment for wrongdoing, but this is more of the idea of discipline. This is the idea of training. This is the idea of preparation and strengthening over the course of time. Conditioning. Despise not the conditioning of the Lord. Neither be weary of His correction. Whom the Lord loves, He corrects, and scourgeth every son whom He receiveth, is how the Hebrews writer describes it, verse 6. Practice makes perfect. Now, discipline is not easy, but there's a benefit to it. Discipline is not easy, but there's love in it. This is the exhortation that is directed to children, verse 5. Or, notice verse 7. If ye endure chastening, God dealeth with you as with sons. For what son is there whom the Father chasteneth not? If you endure this, you have a relationship with God where you're being instructed, directed, helped by Him, improved, nurtured. But if ye be without chastisement, verse 8, whereof all are partakers, but you're going without chastisement, then are ye bastards and not sons. Then you are illegitimate, then you are parentless, then you are in a sad state without the Father in heaven. The easier life seems to be, perhaps we need to have our eyes opened whether or not we're truly serving. Oh yes, Jesus came to give us the abundant life, John 10:10. His yoke is easy, His burden is light, Matthew chapter 11. Absolutely. But all that will live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution, 2 Timothy chapter 3. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be difficulties. And by the way, brethren, something we need to keep in mind. The Hebrews writer, in writing to his audience, does not portray the challenges they face as something that should be easy. Somewhere we got it in our minds that if a brother or sister seems to be struggling, oh, your faith isn't strong enough. If you're not making it look easy, your faith's not strong enough. Does anyone want to tell some of our brethren that who are suffering from the loss of spouses or parents? Does anyone want to say that to those that are suffering physical injury and disability? Oh, if you're demonstrating hardship because of your difficulties, then your faith must not be strong enough. This afternoon, preaching to us will be Brother Don Blackwell, who suffered an injury that left him without the use of his legs just 3 years ago. And over the course of that period of time, not only has he pressed forward and persevered, but he's let brethren see not only his milestones and triumphs, but he's been willing to express his challenges, his troubles, his difficulties, his fears. Christians, we have to be able to do that. We need examples of those that are willing to do that. And we need examples of brethren that are willing to listen. Not look at us and say, well, your faith must not be strong enough, you're complaining. No. Discipline is not easy. And God never said to make it look easy. But He does want us to move forward. Discipline's not easy, but there's love in it. And not every hardship that comes our way is God's design that He's directly inflicting upon us. But He can bring us out of it ever stronger. Discipline's not easy, but there's love in it. Discipline's not easy, but there can be a benefit to it. Hebrews 12 verse 9. Furthermore, we've had fathers of our flesh who chastened us and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? If we were willing to listen to the instruction of our earthly fathers, if my poor sons are willing to listen to the instruction of the dad that they got stuck with having to tolerate, should we not ever much more listen to the words of our God and Father in heaven, heed His word, His will? For verily, they chastened us for a season after their own pleasure, but He for our profit, verse 10, that we might be partakers of His holiness. Every challenge that we face is an opportunity to become more like God. But will we look at it that way? There's a benefit to it. A vacationer was watching a lumberman sorting logs by the river, and every now and then he'd reach a hook into a log and pull it over to one side while the others would float downstream. And he asked, "Sir, why are you just pulling these particular logs over?" The lumberman explained, "Most of these probably look the same to you, but they're not. Those that are floating downstream, they grew up in the valley where they were shielded from intense wind and weather, and they have a coarse grain, and we use that for just plain lumber, general usage. But these over here, they grew up on the mountaintop. And from the time they were saplings, they were subject to the winds and the severe weather of the higher altitudes, and all of those winds made their grain stronger, finer, and more beautiful. And these logs that have been subject to the harder existence are the ones that we have reserved for the more detailed and precious work. This is our fine lumber. Brethren, those whose lives have faced the challenges that so many of us see and we're thinking, I don't know that I can handle that. They're the ones that are likewise saying to us, you can do it. Practice makes perfect. Discipline's not easy, but there's love in it. God's right there. Discipline's not easy, but there's a benefit to it. Discipline's not easy, but there can be joy from it. Verse 11, the point is made that no chastening for the time seemeth joyous but grievous, but afterward it yieldeth the precious fruit of the peaceable fruit of righteousness to them that are exercised thereby. Chastening, difficulty, hardship. No one enjoys it. No one wakes up in the morning and says, man, I'm looking forward to a hard day. I'll be better for it at the end. But how often is it that when we look back over the periods of our lives when we spent the days weeping, when we wondered, can I get through this? What's God doing? Why doesn't God help? God, why are you letting this happen to me? How often is it that when we look back on those days, it doesn't take a long glance at all to see the benefit, the strength, and how He was right there the whole time. And there's joy in that. There was joy for Christ. Hebrews 12:2, for the joy that was set before Him, He endured the cross. He pressed forward. Winners never quit. Practice makes perfect. You can do it. Victory takes sacrifice. And then there's one more idea. Just do it. Look at Hebrews 12:2 again. Looking unto Jesus, you set your sights. You set your sights on the Son of God who faced what He faced, did what He did, and won what He won. You set your sights on the perfect example and you commit yourself to following Him. You set your sights and you drop your distractions. Hebrews 12:1, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us. The every weight is not necessarily sin. The every weight might be all of those sports that get in the way from focusing on Bible study. The every weight might be those secular distractions that get in the way of being at worship, learning of God, shining as a light. Let us lay aside every weight, those encumbrances that in and of themselves may not be wrong, but that we can so often turn into idols. Let us lay aside every weight and let's surrender that sin. The sin which does so easily beset us and detract us from who we are to be. And let's run that race. Run with patience the race that's set before us. Enduring. Moving forward. And then one more thing. Let us run with patience. We don't have to run alone. Hold a hand. We move forward together. We move forward letting one another's examples be an encouragement. We move forward letting one another's examples be a warning. We move forward letting one another's examples be something that can help us to take the next step. We can do it. And there comes a time when it's a matter of just do it. I know not where my foot's going to come down, but it's going to come down in the light walking forward. And if that's all I know, that's enough. Perseverance. We know not what tomorrow holds. But as it's so often said, we know who holds tomorrow. I know all that lies ahead is God. And as long as we move forward, that's enough. The Hebrews writer made a point in Hebrews 12:4. You might have noticed we passed over that verse a moment ago. He told his audience, you've not yet resisted unto blood. In other words, they've not yet given their lives. It not yet cost them everything. The same's true for us. As long as we are here, we have more to give and more to live. So the question that faces us this morning is going to be this. We know that we can persevere for Christ. We know that faith can indeed endure, but how's yours? Have you even started the race? Have you even obeyed the gospel? Have you been willing to say, I believe He's the Son of God, that He died, that He rose, that He left all the proof that I need? Have you repented of sins and been baptized in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins, Acts 2:38? This morning, maybe you're a child of God, and this race has become more of a stationary position. Is it time to start moving forward again by coming forward? This morning, perseverance has motion. And if it's time to start moving forward, why not take advantage of the opportunity?